Now we are recording. On a lot of these days, guys, I'm going to be sharing screens, but when we're starting off, obviously you can see everybody on the weird kind of, I don't know, rectangles next to each other. I'm Dr. Lane. I'm going to be the one who's going to be teaching this course. And as we're going through the semester, obviously things are weird. If you guys need extra help, you have extra questions, we can find a way to meet. Worst case scenario, I'm comfortable with you guys having my cell phone number and we can just chat on the phone. That's absolutely fine. But I do want you guys to know when it comes to, if I give you my phone number so we can talk on the phone, if you ever send me a message after 9 o'clock any night or before essentially 8 o'clock in the morning and it's not about something that involves legit life or death, I am going to be very upset with you. And that is the gentlest way that I can say it. I've been a strength coach and otherwise, and I've had athletes that maybe were a little too inebriated and they decided to send a text message to one of their friends that have the same first name as me, because it's not that rare. And my wife is wondering why I'm getting a text message from a female college girl to come and meet them at the bars at 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't need that in my life. So I'm very comfortable, once again, talking with you guys. If we need to chat, if we need to kind of meet in person, we can try to make it look like we're doing some type of clandestine meeting and just literally like meet in the middle of a field and just kind of chat about whatever you guys want to go through. It's no problem. The goal is for you guys to do well in this class. And if you got questions, I'll always feel free. Now, when I'm lecturing, I'm going to have the participants up on the side along with the group chat so I can see any questions that are up there. And I'm going to ask you guys on occasion to click on the basic polling thing like yes, no, go slower, go faster, all of those pieces. So far, can all of you guys right now go ahead and, click effectively on the yes button or the thumbs up that you're with me so far, you can hear me, so on and so forth? Awesome. As that is slowly being populated. Well, that makes a decent number of you, but not everybody. Okay, cool. So we're going to work on figuring out how to use those controls. Either that or people just kind of turn in the meeting so that way it seems like they're here. That's cool. It's your grades. But I think we got everybody now. Yeah, we got all 25. Awesome. Thank you. All right. So without further ado, let's go ahead and we'll see how the share screen thing goes. And cool. You definitely want to click off of that and we'll come on over here. So everything is going to be pretty much running out of Blackboard. You've got to make sure that you're going on here and you're checking in on everything. Now, since obviously things are very strange right now, I literally have it set up that you can take every single quiz, homework, and everything else right now. You could literally be done with this class by the end of the week. I don't know if you pass it, but you can do the entire class by the end of the week. So and we'll go through the syllabus. Actually, you know what? Let's go and start there to make things a little bit more context. Hi, I'm Dr. Lane. In theory, we are going to be meeting in this building, specifically in room 223, which is next to me, where we're going to have labs on occasion. Now, guys, with the lab on Friday, we are going to meet. The goal is outside on the back of the old rec center, where they've got those picnic tables and otherwise, and do our first lab out there. I don't see a reason for all of us to get uncomfortably close to each other if we can socially distance, because those of you guys that have been in my lab before know that it is not a big space. So you've got the office phone number, you've got my email on there. The YouTube channel is important, guys, because that's where you're going to find all of the lectures, both previous and then the current ones. And then the blog, if you're really bored and you want to see the rantings of an old man, I don't know. So I'm not going to read the course number, description, purpose. Tyler, here's the book you need to get. It's right there in the syllabus. So the Kenny, Wilmore, and Costal X Phys, you can get 5th edition. That's the one that I still teach on because you guys can find it cheap. Because it turns out it hasn't really changed that much. The 6th edition is the newer one that they get to charge an extra 50 to 100 bucks more. Pick it up if you can find it cheap. Otherwise, 5th edition, 6th edition, any of those are going to be fine. Okay? We've got more of those objectives of things you're going to learn and student learning outcomes. So more things you're going to learn, not going to insult you. Let's go to things you really care about. How you pass the class. We're going to have quizzes that you're going to take each week. We're going to have some home exams, kind of assignments you're going to do. Those are going to be listed. You're going to have homework quizzes and labs that you're going to be doing, once again, every week. And then at the end of the semester, we have a cumulative final, which is literally online right now. You could click start. It'll give you 4 hours to take it. And boy, howdy, that is going to be horrible if any of you try to do that right now. But you can go for it. It'll make life easy on me. And then we'll have a couple other hopeful things you guys can maybe do for extra credit as things go on. I'm not quite sure. When in doubt, Blackboard's where you're going to find everything you need for your grade. Attendance is going to be weird. I'm just going to be keeping track of everybody that shows up and kind of pulling that down as far as the attendees and using that to keep track of you guys. And then obviously for labs, it's going to be a separate thing. You don't have to worry about cell phone use. In fact, some of you guys are probably watching this right now from your cell phone. If we have any accommodations we need, make sure that I get documentation about it. Don't cheat. I don't know how you're going to cheat off each other right now, but yeah, try not to cheat on the other things too, since you're going to be doing everything at home. Don't harass people, just be nice, because Lord knows the world right now is not a happy place. And yeah, some basic things here as far as you got to make sure you guys do things on time. That's going to be the big thing that's going to possibly get a lot of you guys. You got to make sure you do the homeworks before they're due. You got to make sure you take those quizzes by the due date, because after they're due and you take them, you get 0 points. It's over, it's done, it's passed. That's the easiest way you can mess yourself up in this class, is to not do the work. That's it. Everything else I've tried to lay out there to the best of your abilities. Now, some things are going to be timed, or you got shorter periods of time to do. Just make sure you're keeping track of when those things are going to go and when you need to do them. Here's our basic outline of, we're effectively going to be covering a chapter per week. The labs are going to go accordingly as we're working through it. A number of these labs are going to be obviously heavily modified, because I don't want you guys to potentially get each other sick. First week, we're going to come in and do some hand grip dynamometry. So you guys are going to come in, everybody's wearing masks. We're going to put on gloves, and then we're going to test our hand grip strength on the hand grippers outside, once again, on the back of the old rec center. And then we're going to be doing that in the 2 lab groups, and hopefully getting to know each other a little bit more, because I hate standing in an empty room talking to myself. This is not great, but I'm sure a lot of you guys don't like it much either. So once again, we're trying to find a way to make things work. And I got a couple other alternatives that I'm going to talk through with you guys in a little bit. So that's the basics of the syllabus. Are there any questions that any of you guys have as of now? You can throw that up in chat, or you can raise your hand and hopefully it'll show me, but me and technology aren't always friends. No questions? I'm just killing it. The ones that are at least up, I can tell you haven't fallen asleep yet, so that's cool. So going on through, you guys can click around. Hopefully the interwebs will allow me to do it. You guys can see how there's the syllabus, you've got your copy of it, all the different lectures up here. You got those for download. Some of them that I've recorded in the past, which turns out haven't really changed that much. Here's all the narrated ones, so you can listen to those on your own. We've got the YouTube ones that are up there. So you guys, it's okay if you're missing the lectures. You can find all this information. The key is check in with me. I just want to make sure you guys are getting it. And if you have questions, we can talk. Now, here's a big thing, the assignments. Don't worry about take-home quiz, because that's not a thing anymore. These study guides are options that you guys can just download and do if you want to, just to kind of help yourself go through the information. These are not due, they're just options, okay? Now, all of these homework quizzes, you have to take them. The homework quiz is going to be over each chapter. Each of these quizzes are going to give you 20 random questions out of a bulk of anywhere from 50 to 80 questions. And then whatever you have for the highest score for that quiz, that's going to go ahead. Thank you, Bailey. I'll be there in a moment. You want to make sure that you take these each week. So homework quiz 1 is going to be due before we have our next lecture on Wednesday. Chapter 2's homework quiz is going to be due on Monday before we lecture next week, and so on and so forth. So stay on top of these due dates, guys. That's what's going to get you. Now, you can take these quizzes as many times as you want. It's only going to record your highest grade. So if you're struggling in this class, because the actual quizzes, the chapter quizzes each week that you're going to take that are cumulative are hard. Not going to lie. If you're going to be taking those on your own and they're difficult. These homework quizzes aren't super easy, but you can keep taking them until you see every single question more than once. And eventually you're going to be able to get everything correct. So if you're struggling at the end of the semester and you're like, I'm concerned, I'm trying to get this grade and I'm just not there yet. And I look online and your homework quiz grade is like averaging like a 6 or a 7, that's telling me that that person didn't try very hard. Now, if you got like a 10 out of 10 on all your homework quizzes, but the actual cumulative quizzes are kicking your teeth in, that's fine. I will go to bat with you and try to figure out the best way we can to get you the grade that you want to get. But that's going to be the thing that's kind of my litmus test of, are you really trying? So all of these are already up. You can take them as many times as you want. Now, Bailey had a good question, which is, what about this King of the Hill that was due on August 5th? And you guys can start taking it now if you want. King of the Hill is literally every single chapter quiz question and that I've written for the entire semester all in one thing. You take it and it gives you like 200 random questions at a time. Whoever has the highest score in the King of the Hill at the end of the semester gets 50 extra bonus points to their final grade. And this semester is only out of like 400 some odd points. So whoever has the highest grade literally just gave themselves a higher letter grade. So don't worry about taking a lot of cracks at it now, but later on in the semester, make sure you're doing it. You can see all these take-home assignments, and they're going to, same thing, where these due dates are. They're big questions, which means they should have pretty big answers, and you got to make sure you're answering each part of these. Go through and take your time. And then finally, we do have one extra credit thing. It's something you're going to have to build up to, but I've got an example online where I did this with the Doom guy because I'm a little bit too much of a fan. Yes, and Catherine, you can take the King of the Hill as many times as you want. It's only going to record your highest grade. All the homework quizzes, you can take them as many times as you want up until the due date, and it only takes your highest grade. Okay? The assignments, you only get to turn that in once. The chapter cumulative quizzes, you only get to take once. Labs, you only get to turn them in once. So all those, multiple. And you should be able to see on there how that stuff goes. And then here's how you can get extra credit for doing that. So that's the basics of how the assignment works. And now the online quizzes, we'll go to the labs first. I'm going to probably make some modifications to the labs, but this is where you can find them. This is also where you're going to submit them. All the labs are going to be submitted online. Now, for those of you guys that aren't comfortable and or if any of you guys get infected at some point, something else happens, I have videos of every single lab on that YouTube channel. You can literally just watch the video, write down the numbers, and do the math on it there and never even have to come into lab, okay? Let me know if you're going to do that. But I want you guys to have that option because I think it's pretty damn dumb if one of us or a number of us get sick just so that we could watch someone, work really hard on a bike and nearly throw up from doing it. Hint, Wingates actually can do that. And I hope that you guys will enjoy the story in case you guys don't even go that direction because I shot all these labs over the summer. I did the Wingate lab, which is a 30-second all-out test, which is really normal to be lightheaded afterwards and sometimes vomit. I forgot to hit record. So I did the entire test by myself in the lab. And I was just like, whoa, like retch. And I was like, oh, and I look over at my, I'm really glad that I didn't have a microphone on because what came out of my mouth was probably a good 1 minute of intermittent crying, obscenity, and trying not to dry heave because I wasted that attempt. I was so pissed off at myself. But you guys have that as an option. You don't have to come in and do this stuff. If you're feeling under the weather, we've got options. I want you guys to do well. Make sure you turn in all these labs when we get done with them on Friday. Now notice there's a couple extra labs on the end here. Hopefully by the end of the semester, we can figure out something we can kind of do that'd be fun as like an online lab where you guys don't have to see each other. I don't know what that's going to be yet, so something we'll come up with. So don't worry about those right now. Just focus on the labs that you're going to actually do. So the online quizzes. Here's the ones that really matter. You're going to get somewhere in the neck of 7 to 10 minutes. You're going to get 10 questions. They're going to be pretty difficult. Yes, you can print out the labs and bring them with you on Friday to fill them out, Catherine. You can also go ahead and just do the lab on your laptop or computer, whatever you want, like bring that to class, and that's what you type things into. And Bailey, if you're going to miss lab, yeah, just email me. That's fine. just something that I've got documentation because, I understand obviously every professor is kind of doing their own version of this, like how they're approaching it. And I want you guys to do well. And I don't see the point of undue risk. Like there's certain things that obviously, yeah, if we're going to take a blood pressure, you kind of need someone to take or to take it on, but you could take it on yourself. So like there's a number of these labs that we're going to be able to rearrange effectively so we don't have to interact with each other as much, which, yeah, it sucks. And if you want to redo them after you pass the class and the world goes back to normal, by all means, we'll make something happen. But in the interim, I just don't want to do things we don't need to. So all these wonderful quizzes. These quizzes are going to be about 50% new material. So what we cover that week on the chapter, and these are going to be due on Wednesdays, and about 50% cumulative information. So we can't you're not just going to study one chapter and then be able to, do well. You're going to have to make sure you're staying on top of all your old stuff and all the new stuff. Otherwise, it's going to get you. And I don't want anyone to do poorly. So the final exam, like I said, it's right here. You can click on it right now and give it some go. It is amazingly hard. I wrote it and I'm so proud of it. But it's really going to test not just your knowledge of the class, but your ability to apply that knowledge. So it's not just, kind of like game show information. Can you guys apply what we learned in the class? Like, what's it really mean to be a fast twitch, fiber dominant athlete or a slow twitch, fiber dominant athlete? Where would we want them from one side or the other? If you guys don't mind throwing up kind of a yes or a no, how many of you guys have seen the TV show Altered Carbon, or at least kind of know the basics of it? So like, yes if you have, no if you haven't. I think that's something you should be able to pull on there. If I could, I have no idea what's going on right now. Okay, oh, that's kind of cool. It shows me we have 2 no's and then everyone else is just not helping the democratic process. Ian and Raekwon, thank you so much for voting. And okay, and we got Jordan. So does that mean everybody else is a yes, or they're just kind of apathetic and like, whatever?
We're trying to do it in the chat. I can't find like a poll anywhere.
Okay, where are you guys seeing on your end? Because I see it under participants for me. Ian, if you don't mind unmuting yourself and kind of walking people through how you did it. Oh, and people are just putting no up in the chat. Oh, this is good. Trendon, what is NOI?
Sorry, I meant to put no.
I didn't know if that was no in another language. No, you're good. Oh, that's weird. Ian, you're somehow joining twice to the same meeting. Oh, yeah, so you can have some sound on there. Okay. Well, it's on Netflix. So the basic idea of the show, and you guys can like watch previews or anything, is it's a futuristic sci-fi world where effectively everyone has a disc in the base of their skull that you can pop out and then plug them into a different body. So effectively you can body swap with other people, which is what I really had I had way too much fun with on the final, which is, in certain situations, like what body type would you want to swap out with? So, for instance, I think I've met pretty much all of you guys. And so we can all agree that I'm decidedly not tall. So if I wanted to have a chance of playing the NBA, I'd want to unplug from this body and plug into somebody who's like 7 feet tall, which would definitely give me the chance. Now, the questions for the exam are not that simple. Like, yeah, you want to be a really high-level gymnast. Probably want to be really short and really powerful. But instead, really thinking through and applying, like, okay, what type of body would I want to be in? Like, who is the person that would really have an advantage in this specific scenario? So that's what it's kind of building towards. You don't really have to understand the plot of the show and otherwise, but I enjoyed it. The books are really good too, but yeah, now I'm just further outing myself as a nerd. So let's move on. Okay, so awesome. Now you guys have got the basics of how we're going to be working through the Blackboard shell. So let's go over to, now here is one of, problem is I'm doing this on one screen, I've got all these pop-ups. Can you tell I recorded this lecture during the pandemic because you can see my wonderful rainbow mask? My sister made that for me, so it's special, but you can literally just find my very mediocre channel and you can see all these different lectures. So you're going to be obviously under the phys, lectures and labs, and then you're going to find everything. Oh yeah, you guys ready to watch some awesome deadlifting? Here is Aaron Sasha. Watch this, look at that speed. We're still working on that technique. We're still working on that technique. And Zach, just for your own entertainment, that's my bar behind him with 3 plates plus band resistance for the work, for my work sets. So we don't exactly use the same weights, but like you'll find all the labs through there, guys. You'll find all the lectures. You've got all that stuff that you guys can go ahead and go through on your own. So we're in weird times. I want you guys to be able to do well, and I want you guys to have as many different ways you can access the information. So yes, awesome. So without further ado, that brings us to the actual attempting at lecturing. But kind of before we get going, what questions do you guys have for me? Because obviously I feel like I'm talking to myself. No questions? I'm just knocking this thing out of the park. Ian's just like, no, you're not knocking it out of the park, but you're trying, and at least that's something. That's okay. That's okay, guys. Guys, it's going to be weird, and I don't want it to be overwhelming. So that's why I want to kind of go through. That's why I want to show you guys kind of the Blackboard. Make sure you guys have all this stuff information you need, understanding what we're going to be talking through, and as far as all the due dates are up there. Everything should be up there correctly, except for that King of the Hill one. Thank you for pointing that out, guys. I'll make sure that I get that remedied so everything is showing you when this and that is due. So I guess if you guys don't have any major questions, I'm gonna kind of effectively, minimize my videos of you guys. And now effectively, if you guys have questions, throw them up in the chat. Otherwise, and you guys can like raise your hand or anything like that. Just figure if I'm talking and you have a question, and don't write the entire question at once, because fast as I can talk, I can really blow through things. Instead, just put something up there like, wait, slow down, or just literally put a question mark, hit enter, and then I'll pause and wait until you can either unmute yourself and ask the question, or you can go ahead and just type out the question in the chat. Sound good, guys? And yet again, I'm talking to myself. All right. So let's talk about muscle. That's where we're starting off with when it comes to exercise physiology. So we're really looking at, contractile tissue in the body, of which there are 3 different types, okay? Now, when we say muscle types, it's not the same as a fiber type. Fiber type is when we're talking about fast twitch, slow twitch, and some intermediates. When we're talking about muscle type, we're talking about cardiovascular, we're talking about smooth muscle, and we're talking about skeletal muscle. So smooth muscle is what's wrapped around your small and large intestine. It's also wrapped around your arteries and arterioles, and it's what allows for them to effectively, what's known as constrict and then dilate through relaxation and then contraction. We then have our cardiac muscle fiber, which is specific to our heart. That's the one that's beating all the time. It has a couple different properties than what we see in our normal skeletal muscle. And then we have skeletal muscle. That's the stuff that we can flex, the stuff that We can allow us to pick up objects, move objects, and obviously the body is an object. So the smallest unit we're going to see is going to be a muscle fiber. Inside of that are individual muscle fibrils, which are going to be made up of these individual units known as a sarcomere, which is going to allow us to contract our muscles and move. So when it comes to those individual fiber types inside of skeletal muscle, we have 3 different types in normal healthy humans. We've got our slow twitch type 1, we've got our fast twitch type 2A, and then our fast twitch type 2X, sometimes referred to as type 2B. They're the same dang thing. Now, our type 1 are the most aerobically fit. They're the ones that are the best for long distance running, for activities that have a longer duration. However, they have the lowest power output of all of them. So what they give us in endurance, they don't give us in power. And then the opposite is true with the type 2X. They're the most powerful fibers we have. They're the ones you're going to use when you're doing a vertical jump, when you're throwing a baseball as hard as you can, when you're trying to lift a heavy weight as fast as possible. However, they're really highly fatigable. They're not able to keep up that speed and power of contraction for a long period of time. And all of you guys that have ever lifted a weight or tried to run a 400 meter, have experience before in your life, you can't keep up that maximal speed and power output for a long period of time because they simply tire out. Now, our muscles don't do anything unless our nervous system tells them to contract. Otherwise, they're just going to stay relaxed. They're not going to waste energy. And what our body does is what's known as orderly recruitment of muscle. This is also known as the size principle, sometimes referred to as Henneman's size principle, which is as we're getting a muscle to contract, we're going to start with the smallest type 1 muscle fibers and then slowly pick up more individual motor units, which is going to start recruiting more and more muscle fibers. And then we're going to start tapping into those type 2A fibers and then eventually into those type 2X. Because the body's about efficiency. It's going to use just the minimal amount of force it needs to do whatever activity you're doing. Whereas if I use maximal force every single time I did everything, I would punch myself in the face with my water bottle while trying to take a drink from it. Much less, could you imagine if everything that you did, you had to do with maximal force? From putting on your clothes to can you imagine shaving and doing that with max force? You carrot peel yourself half the time. So we want to be able to recruit these in an orderly fashion. And notice by sticking with the more slow twitch, we can also be more efficient with our fuel use because our type 2 fibers utilize anaerobic energy systems much more predominantly than our slow twitch. Now, finally, is muscle fiber type and athletic success. A number of sports are going to really, your best athletes are effectively going to be your freaks. The ones that have a really high advantage in one muscle fiber type compared to another. So go ahead in the chat, guys. Give me an example of a sport that you think if you had a naturally high amount of slow twitch muscle fibers, you'd have an advantage. Awesome. Cross country, long distance athletes, absolutely. Track and field, the distance ones, true. Now, where on the track and field team, guys, do you think you'd find athletes that if they had a really naturally high amount of those type 2X fibers, they'd be a better athlete? So what events in track and field? Bingo. What else other than sprint? Good. High jump and long jump. Good, guys. Come on, you're missing the most fun events in all of track and field. Bingo. Shot put, discus, hammer. Those are folks that naturally typically have a greater amount of type 2 fibers. So I'm not sure, javelin, Zach? Is that how they say it in Francois? I'm sorry, guys.
I don't know how to spell.
I've got to have some fun somehow, guys. I'm sorry. But yeah, javelin, absolutely. Literally last fall, we did some testing, obviously with exercise science students. Do a number of you guys know Hannah Cook? She's one of the undergrads in the program. Obviously, she's a bit ahead of you guys in some of the classes. I'll take that as a maybe. Okay, cool. But we were doing 40 and 100-yard sprints, and she was the fastest girl in the class, and she's one of the throwers for our track and field team. Like, she's real fast. That was impressive. And that's coming down to the fact that she probably has a natural advantage with a greater amount of type 2 muscle fiber. So when we're looking at the anatomy of the skeletal muscle, the entire muscle itself is wrapped in a sheath known as an epimysium, okay? This is gonna be made up of a lot of individual bundles of fiber, which we call a fasciculi, okay? These have a paramysium, so another layer inside of it that essentially is wrapped around it. This is where we're gonna have the individual muscle cells, so our individual fibers. And then inside of those fibers, we're gonna have yet another endomysium, so another layer around it, and that's where we're gonna have all the individual sarcomeres. And the sarcomeres is where we're going to go ahead and get our contraction. Now, when it comes to muscle cells, the membrane, the cell membrane around it, we refer to it as the plasmalemma, okay? This is where we're going to fuse with our tendons on either end, and on the outside is where we're going to go ahead and conduct the action potential that's going to allow us to get our muscle to contract. Along with this is where we're going to work on maintaining pH of the cell and transporting nutrients inside and outside of the cell. So have you guys ever been shocked before on accident by like electricity, or had like a TENS unit or anything else ever hooked up to you? And so about how fun is that for your muscle to contract maximally out of nowhere? Not fun is a, sorry guys, I love the spelling. Yeah, and so feels great. Cody, I've got questions, bud. I've got questions. At the end of the day, what we're really talking about is muscle is excitable tissue. And so when we are able to go ahead and get a little bit more conduction. Okay, Cody, when you were electrocuted, are we talking like an actual, like through an electric socket, or are we talking about you're just hooked up to a TENS unit? Those are two very different realities. And while Cody's answering that question, what's also interesting is, yes, we've got these muscle fibers that are mature that contract. We also have what's known as satellite cells. Satellite cells are effectively stem cells that are specific to our muscle fibers. And hard training is going to activate them, which in turn, they're going to literally fuse to our mature muscle fibers, which is going to increase the number of nuclei on our cell. And what's interesting about skeletal muscle that is not true of any other cell in the human body, well, a healthy one, is they're what's known as multinucleated. And since they have multiple nuclei, what can occur is with our training, we're actually able to build muscle faster. Because if you guys think back to physiology, you think back to just old school biology, what does the nucleus of a cell do? And you feel free to unmute yourself and give it a shot, guys. Brain of the cell is potentially one way to think of it. How so, Sam? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does control the cell, so to speak. So specifically, That's where, what do we store inside of our nucleus? True, John does initiate cell division, but we don't get cell division. If we do, it's very rare, and that's what's known as hyperplasia in muscle fibers. Our DNA, exactly. What is our DNA? Yeah, exactly. Trendon and John. It's effectively the genetics that ends up being the codes that literally makes the proteins that make up our cells that in turn control the processes. So effectively, it's where all the blueprints are stored. So what we can do is by increasing the number of nuclei, we effectively increase the amount of blueprints we have. We've got more blueprints we can build off of. We can effectively build more cellular machinery in a given period of time. So it's the equivalent of if you have one factory making a gidget, okay? And it can make 1 gidget per hour. So over a course of 5 hours, you can make 5 gidgets. Now, if you go from 1 factory to 5 factories and you take the same 5 hours, how many gidgets can you make? It's a math problem. Feel free to answer it. No worries. So if 1 factory can make 1 gidget per hour, if you take 1 factory and you have it make gidgets for 5 hours, you'll have 5 gidgets. If you go from that 1 factory, now you have 5 factories. After 5 hours, how many gidgets can you have? 25. Yeah, exactly, guys. So here's the big key. Through hard training, you can literally increase the amount of nucleation of your muscle cells. So what that literally means is after you've done this hard training to increase your performance in these areas, you literally can always get back to that previous level of performance faster than how long it took you in the first place. So if I remember correctly, and I might be about to just like brutalize your name by saying it incredibly wrong, so please correct me, guys, because I'm not great. But Raekwon, you tore your pec also, right? Didn't think he was going to get called out today, did he? No, I'm kidding. And hopefully he can hear me. Well, we'll keep moving since that analogy might not work until he hears me. But effectively, when an individual comes back from injury, you can typically come back to the previous level of performance far faster than how long it took you to get to that first level of performance in the first place. This is also one of the mechanisms that gives us the differences between men and women, because testosterone is actually going to also initiate the replication and then the fusion of satellite cells. So hence being male gives you an advantage when it comes to muscle mass, along with people that use obviously in exogenous hormones, aka using steroids. They are also going to have an advantage because they're literally going to have more of these nuclei to their cells, which in turn is going to allow them to recover faster and reach a higher level of performance than they would have otherwise. Oh, your mic's not working? Okay, well, Raekwon, you tore your pec, right? You can just go and click, you can just say yes or no, if I remember correctly. Okay, so obviously I know it's weird, you know, your pec never really feels perfectly the same, at least it hasn't for me. But when you had to take that layoff, how much strength did you lose in your squat? And just to give you context, guys, Raekwon is one of the guys on the football team here. So, and yeah, so 10% of, 400, 500 something pounds is no joke. But as far as gaining that strength back, did you gain it back faster than effectively it took you to get to that level of performance before you got hurt? Bingo. And that's part of it, is the function of those satellite cells. Thank you, bud. So inside of the cell, instead of cytoplasm, it's what's known as sarcoplasm. Sarco is just literally a Greek root for muscle. Okay. Now, what's interesting there is we have glycogen. Glycogen is a highly branched storage form of glucose. We keep that stored in our muscles for energy, and then we also store it in our liver, so it can also be freed up into the bloodstream to help all the tissues in the body, but obviously also be used for muscle whenever we're exercising with higher intensity. Now, an interesting feature of skeletal muscle is what's known as transverse T-tubules. I'm going to only refer to as T-tubules pretty much here on out. These are literally extensions of the plasmalemma that effectively go through the cell. And effectively, this allows the signal to have the muscle contract go into the deepest parts of that individual muscle fiber way faster than would occur otherwise. The reason for it, as my voice cracks like I'm a prepubescent teen, is instead of it having to go all the way around the muscle cell, it can go straight through. And that obviously is going to decrease the transit time. And we're going to be storing calcium, which we're going to find is one of the most important minerals for muscle contraction, is going to be stored in what's known as the sarcoplastic reticulum, specifically to a protein known as calsequestrin. But that's not, you don't really need to know the calsequestrin side. You do need to know that calcium at rest is stored in the sarcoplastic reticulum. And this is something that I'm going to just be referring to as the SR. Guys, when I use acronyms, don't ever hesitate to be like SR question mark, T-tubule question mark. And I apologize for making fun of people's spelling. This is my classroom today. It's very sad. Now, the individual myofibrils, that's where we're getting the action. That's where we're contracting our muscles. That's where we're actually causing them to shorten, okay? Now, individual muscle fibers are literally made up of hundreds to thousands of these individual units. And the smallest unit is what's known as a sarcomere. Now, a sarcomere is going to be essentially chains, and it's actually 6 chains, of actin on either side. In the center is what's known as myosin. Myosin is the part that actually effectively grabs, I guess I can move my arms closer. I have really, really long arms. No, I'll scoot back, maybe that'll work. They grab the myosin, or the myosin grabs the actin and pulls the actin into the center. Actin is a rope. It just hangs out and kind of gets dragged along wherever it's pulled. It's the myosin that's actually the parts that's grabbing on each side and pulling them together. And it's going to do so through a ratcheting effect until eventually it hits the bookends up against each other and the muscle can't shorten any further. Okay? So myosin is what causes muscles to shorten. It does so by grabbing actin. Any questions right there? Because that is one of the biggest linchpins of the class. No worries, Zach. Okay, so actin are going to be strands on either side. So if we think of it, it's going to be a 6-strand that looks like this looks really special, okay? So this is going to be how it looks if you could look at it from the inside, but this is how you're going to look at it from the sides, okay? So this is the view you see on the slide. And so myosin is going to be inside of it, and the heads are going to ratchet and pull this into the center, okay? So actin is just effectively a rope that's hanging out. Myosin is effectively an arm that grabs onto myosin and pulls it, myosin grabs onto actin, pulls it, releases, grabs a little higher, pulls it, grabs, pulls it until the actin is into the center as short as it can be. Now, we have what's known as alpha motor neurons. This is actually what's getting our muscles to contract when we choose to. This is where we're sending the signal. So a motor unit is literally just made up of one motor neuron and then all of the individual fibers that it gets to contract. So those slow twitch, remember we talked about that size principle? They're going to go ahead and innervate maybe only 10 to 100 individual muscle fibers. Our type 2, our fast twitch motor units are going to innervate thousands of individual fibers. So if I tell you guys to just barely produce any force, like just to barely lift your arm and hold it up there and then just barely hold a light weight, it's pretty easy to be able to do the fine tuning force because we're just using small motor units. Now, if I ask you guys to give me the difference between running at 95% of your top speed and 100% of your top speed, you're going to have a heck of a time doing it. How many of you guys ever played sports with somebody and the coaches are like, okay, guys, we're going out there, we're only doing 75%. And then 2 minutes later, everybody's going to 100% like it doesn't even matter and they're trying to rip each other's heads off. Like, unfortunately, that's one of the realities of our motor unit system, which is as we go with higher percentages of our peak force, we really lose our fine-tuned skills. Now, the neuromuscular junction is going to be the junction of the neuron and the muscle. They really broke the mold with that name, okay? That's where we're going to have communication between the two. So we have this electrical signal that goes down the neuron all the way until we get to the axon terminal. When we get to the axon terminal, it's going to release what's known as acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is what's going to bind on the other side of the neuromuscular junction on the muscle, and that's what, if we essentially get enough acetylcholine to bind, we're going to get that motor fiber to contract. So muscles are interesting in that we can just get them to twitch, so just get a partial contraction. If we send more stimuli in a shorter period of time, we're going to get a greater amount of force production, but if we, and that's when this is summation, if we send a huge amount of stimulus to contract in a short period of time, we're going to get a full, they refer to it as tetanus or fused tetanus, maximal contraction of your muscle. So any of you guys can just, twitch a muscle a little bit, but if you think maximal contraction, you've got to really send that signal to the muscle to get it to contract maximally. And so this is that same thing I just talked through, only now we're going to really talk through the basics of how a muscle contracts. And we're going to talk about it next time because this is involved and it's one of the bigger components of the class. So I want you guys to really review these slides. You guys will notice if you look at the more recent slides, I really pared them down to the big rocks, so to speak, the important things you really need to understand. All the information is still there. Your textbook is obviously going to go way further in depth with a lot of the things that I'm talking guys through, but I want you guys to be armed with the major principles that matter. Because you guys as students, I don't want you guys, now the homeworks, I'm going to treat you like you're trying to be Dr. Google, which is, can you give me the facts that straight back and forth. But your quizzes, and especially that final exam, I want to see that you guys can apply the things that you've learned. And application, as you guys all know, is way, way harder than just what is the capital of Rhode Island? To which, why waste brain space memorizing that it's Providence? Because somebody told you to in 4th grade. Okay? Instead, focus on understanding the principles and then understanding how applying these principles and understanding these mechanisms are really going to matter. So I think that was a lot for day 1. You guys can feel free to disagree. You guys know how to get in contact with me. What questions do you have for me? Otherwise, we'll, get you guys done in a matter of moments. And then I will always try to upload these to YouTube directly thereafter. I'm probably going to try to do some lecturing from home, but my internet connection at home is garbage. So if I upload there, figure that whenever we finish lecture, it might be up online 4 to 5 hours later. So any questions from any of you guys? No? So remember, or real fast, someone will throw up in the chat, just as a quick reminder, everybody, where are we meeting for lab on Friday? Exactly. So I'll have gloves there for you guys. Be wearing your masks. and we'll hopefully actually get to hear what everybody's voice sounds like, because we don't have to worry about microphone issues, and kind of get to know one another a little bit. But stay safe, guys. We're going to make it work. You always don't hesitate to shoot me a message. I'm not going to necessarily reply to you 5 minutes later, but don't hesitate to send me a message as we're going through this stuff. So make sure everybody's okay. I went over, sorry. Everybody get to your next classes. You guys have a great day, okay? I'm going to shut down the meeting. Bye-bye.